parenting, we're as smooth as bourbon. I'm Lene.
And I'm Jordan. And this is Bourbon and Babies.
Straight up parenting
on the rocks.
All right, we are back. It is Bourbon and Babies time.
Bourbon and Babies.
Bourbon and Babies, woo! And we have so many people here.
I know, a plethora.
A plethora
of
people. We have two writers in the house.
Yes.
Woohoo. We have Stephanie Feger. Did I say that right?
You got it.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay. Who wrote the book, Color Today Pretty. Mm-hmm. And we have Lauren LeBlanc, who is a middle grade fiction author and the winner of many prizes, a wonderful, talented person. And then we also have Stephanie's husband, Cory, who is a physical therapist.
That's it. You got it.
He's a PT person. He's a physical therapist.
He has blue eyes, a matching shirt, very close cropped haircut.
Well-groomed beard.
But he's taken, guys. He's taken.
Okay. Hands
Sorry,
up.
George.
Sorry, ladies.
Gentlemen.
And gentlemen.
Yes.
When I need to feel good about myself, I am coming to see Jordan.
Come to the Price household.
I will make you feel warm and fuzzy.
We've got you covered.
But the fuzzy is just my chest hair.
Ditto.
He has some too.
Oh, and what we are talking about today is this thing that happens to all parents, moms and dads, who, when you have kids, we all struggle with getting so completely consumed by keeping these little humans alive that sometimes we lose sight of who we are and what we need to make ourselves feel like the humans that we used to be. I mean, I'll admit, I'm a different person now than I was before I had kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm exactly the same.
You know what? You are.
That tracks.
You are exactly the same.
No, I'm not being funny. I'm exactly the
No,
same.
he is. And that's the thing is we're all different. And I think that for some of us, it's more of a struggle than for others. And sometimes, I don't want to generalize too much, but I do think sometimes moms especially get sucked into this world and we sometimes lose sight of ourselves. But I think dads do too. Mm-hmm. I think there are times when we forget all of the fun things that we used to do for ourselves and the joy and power that we got from those fun things. Mm-hmm. And it's not until later in life when you hear about people who are empty nesters and they, quote, rediscover themselves. And what I never wanted to do when I had kids was be the person who lost sight of myself and had to rediscover myself 20 years later. So Jordan and I have made a conscious effort over the years to continue to do the things that we love and enjoy. But those things have changed. Mm-hmm. So do you guys agree? Where are you on this?
Absolutely. And, we were talking about this earlier about how I think in any form of a relationship, whether it's a relationship with your partner or with your children, they evolve, right?
Or with yourself.
They evolve and there's growth that happens. And sometimes you grow down the path of everything still makes sense and is congruent. And other times you reevaluate. I mean, I know you and I were talking about things we loved to do when we were kids. You know, I thought I would go into theater. That was a passion of mine. I was going to do community theater as well and all this stuff. And now that I have kids, like it just it's not what my heart is anymore, but it doesn't feel bad, right? Because I've grown differently and that's okay.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think sometimes even just hobbies, not even what we thought we were going to be when we grow up, but even just hobbies. Cory, you were talking about sports.
Yeah,
earlier.
It serves as an outlet to a lot of folks too. Fitness is a big piece too. That now that I'm thinking about it, so to make time for yourself to be able to do that is so important, and it can really play a role.
And it's easy to lose sight of that.
So how does that affect you?
10 pounds. Maybe 15, 20.
Yeah.
But you're still fit.
Depending on the time of year.
So are you finding time to take care of your body?
Currently, no. This time last year, yes.
I disagree.
So
this is how things have evolved. Like back in the day, Cory would do softball leagues and basketball leagues with his friends, but we have 3 children now and I need his help and he needs my help and it takes both of us. So instead, we heard of a basketball league that was taking place at our kid's school, which was wonderful because it allowed him to get the exercise that he needed, but it was integrated into what mattered to our family. So now not only did he get exercise, he's really bummed that it's over for the year, but he got to meet more people in the school, parents and such, that deepened our relationship with our kids. So, I mean, it doesn't always have to be one or the other. Sometimes it can be both, just if you look at it differently.
That's the sweet spot.
That's jackpot.
And he lost weight. So see, it was a win-win-win.
But the season's over and it's back. So. Take what you get.
What about you, Lauren?
I mean, I think for me, it was an evolution. It took a little bit longer. I didn't, my kids are 10 and 7. I have 2 girls, and I was a full-time classroom teacher for 6 years and didn't stay home until my now 7-year-old was born. And for like a year, that's all I did. I was just full-time momming and sort of apologetic about it because it felt like I should be doing more. I have a master's degree. Look at all this I paid for my education. I should be contributing more. And then life sort of steps in and says, oh, well, here's this opportunity. Here's this opportunity. What was hard for me was figuring out that quiet guilt that sneaks in anytime you step away from being the most engaged, the most committed parent. Mm-hmm. It felt like when I was home and all in and doing only laundry and dinner, meal planning or whatever, then I wasn't living up to my full potential. But if I stepped out of that, then who was I as a parent? Mm-hmm. So it's how do you figure out how to be all of those things, not only to yourself, but to the world? And where I am now is an interesting place that's taken a lot of, I guess I would say it's taken 7 years since my youngest was born to figure out how to balance a writing career and a performing career and a parenting career. And figure out how to do it without apologizing for any of it.
Speaking of apologizing, when I met you, Lauren, you were just dipping your toe back into the theater world, into your performance, which you're an outstanding performer. And when I asked you about what you do, which is a question I try not to ask actually, because it just makes me, when people ask that, I think it's akin to saying, what do you do to make money?
Yes.
Right. Which feels yucky. Yes. And so it's the same. And so
it's not what lights you on fire. It's how do you earn an income? Right.
So when we had that conversation, you were still saying, well, I'm a teacher, but
I'm on family leave. So I had a really hard time, and my husband had to point this out to me. I wish he was here to he's on his way back from the airport. He had to point out to me, like, you've had a real hard time with that identity piece of it, with saying I'm a stay-at-home mom. And even now when people are like, what do you do? Well, I say, well, I'm a full-time mom and I'm a part-time everything else. I'm a part-time writer and I'm a part-time actor. Even though a lot of times those things, hours-wise, are more, there's more commitment there. It's hard for me to put any one label on it. I can't even say I'm an actor or I'm a writer because that feels like it cancels out the other parts of who I am. Yeah. And so that's a tricky answer.
You're actually none of those. You're actually a chef because the dinner you made tonight was delicious.
You're right, though. The identity piece is so interesting and trying to be all of those things. And
there's not a wrong answer. And maybe there's not a right answer. I just think I don't have a good party line. When I was a teacher, it was easy to answer that question because I earned a steady income teaching kids. And it was easy to say, I'm a teacher. I teach middle school. That's what I used to do. Mm-hmm. And now it's a much more nuanced thing that I'm busier than I've ever been, busier than I was when I was a teacher. Yep. But there's a lot more nuance to it. So it's hard to answer that so what do you do, Lauren? It's just a more complicated answer than people are maybe prepared for.
So I think you've hit something that's really interesting and probably relates to a lot of people. I've been thinking a lot about how do we define ourselves? What does that mean? And I've actually tried to push myself to live undefined. And let me explain a little bit about what that means. So, I was impacted by a corporate layoff. I was doing both things. I was a mom of 3 and working 80 hours a week, and everyone's like, "You're awesome." And inside I felt like I was a hot mess, right? I was crumbling. I hated everything about it. And so when I found out that they were doing corporate layoffs, I raised my hand and called my boss. I'm like, "Get me in. I'll never get out. I'll never do anything else if I don't get pushed out by these layoffs." And so anyways, my boss never was able even to tell anybody that I wanted out. Our whole department was eliminated. The day after I lost my job, I participated in a workshop for people who were building a speaking business. And I was sitting in this workshop. It was the beginning of a 9-month journey with the organization to learn how to do this. And everyone's going around the room introducing themselves. I'm the last person on the table to be introduced. So I'm sitting amongst CEOs and entrepreneurs and all of this stuff. And it gets to me and I'm like, the whole time I'm spinning in my mind, how am I going to tell people what I do? And it started a whole new way I saw myself. And I challenged everybody else in the room to say, I said, "Hi, I'm Stephanie and I'm unemployed. And I've come to realize that doesn't define me. So I think it's wonderful what you do, but that really isn't who you are." So I sit back and I think, because some of the stuff of the challenge that I think of, well, gosh, what's it like to be a mom, and what's it like to be an entrepreneur, and what's it like to do all of this stuff? I take a step back and realize that it's not about what I do, but it's about what fuels me and how I get there. Because at the end of the day, jobs are jobs. We're all replaceable. I hate to say that. I found that firsthand after working somewhere for over a decade. It is something that we use our skills for, but what defines us is very different. And I even feel like that as a mother.
Absolutely.
I love my children, but my children do not define me.
Yeah, definitely.
In fact, the best thing I think I can do is to not live in that box and prove to them that they're worth more than anything that this world makes you think you have to live with it. Yeah. And that was actually the essence of my book. And so the whole process for me of living in an undefined way was a shift in perspective. And my kids did do that for me. So as much as I like to try to not look like live where I, think of my life as buckets that I'm in, I realized that if I hadn't become a mom, if I hadn't gone down this journey of losing a child and having 3 and all of this, I don't think that I would be able to look at life in this way. I think my career would drive me. I think that my work ethic is crazy. And I think that was, almost to my demise, So yeah, everything you're saying, these labels we put on ourselves, how we look at that as a part of our identity. I hate that our society is like that, because there's so much more that we bring to the table.
Well, we live in such a culture that's driven by the bottom line. And so even
we take pride in being busy. We take pride in being workaholics.
Right.
We take pride in all of those things, and our narrative is built around that. Yep.
And what I have found for me personally and within our family dynamic is it's been hard for me to find a way to give a quick answer to that party line question, like, what do you do? Because I, for a long time, wasn't a financial contributor to our family. And that was a place that I really struggled. And it took me a little while to figure out that was not necessarily something I was putting on myself, but that was something that was being put on me after just years of conditioning.
Absolutely.
As a performer, I performed all of my life and was a writer too all of my life, but performing especially, since I was a child, since I was 5 years old, and then sort of took accidentally almost 10 years off from performing. And one of the things, and I have this conversation with other actors in Dallas, where I live now, all the time. And I tell them one of the things that having children and coming back into a highly competitive arts career has taught me is I used to hang my self-worth on every audition. And I used to hang my self-worth on whether or not I booked the job. And while it still is very important to me and is still, I'm still going to give my best effort. And if I don't get a part, I'm still going to be crushed for a little while. Those little people, they don't see me any differently. I have no less value in my home. They're not going to think less of me or think I'm less talented. And actually, really the rest of the world doesn't either.
No.
If I give myself enough credit. But what I learned in coming back to this, like I said, highly demanding, highly competitive, super saturated market full of other singers and actors is, it's one piece of who I am. It is important. It's an important part of who I am. It's like the Inside Out islands of personality. Like that would be one of my islands, right?
It's brilliant.
You know, it's like friendship and honesty and hockey. Like Riley had Hockey Island, Bing Bong, right?
Oh.
I have
Can tell
Theater
her parents.
Island, and I have Writer Island, and I have Family Island, and they're all really super important facets of who I am, and any one of them doesn't define me.
And I think before, I love what you I love what both of you said. And I think that the way that having children changed you, changed your perception about failure and what what impact that actually has on your life, and your perception of what success looks like was changed by having kids. And I think I can echo both of that. I realized I didn't start to find, boundaries around what energy I was willing to give to my work until I had children. So before we had kids, we still lived in New York, and I commuted a ridiculously long time every day. And I would come home from work after driving for hours to get home to Brooklyn, and I would have to drive around for half an hour looking for a parking spot on top of all of the other time. And I was becoming a crazy person, and I would call Jordan, and because
Come downstairs, get in the car.
he's the nicest man, he would come and get in the car and drive around and find the spot for me so that I could go upstairs and start to decompress. I would decompress for half an hour, and then I would pull my laptop out, and I would sit down in front of the television, and we would watch Buffy and or whatever. And I would work while he cooked dinner. And because we didn't have children who needed all of that time and attention, I worked extraordinarily long hours.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't until I had kids that I realized, oh shit, that is not, it is not physically possible. And that was the end of bringing work home. Now that I'm an entrepreneur and I have my own company, I do, after the kids go to bed, I admit it, starting at 8 o'clock, I do get some of my best work done between 8 and 11 while Jordan's watching HGTV. I'm back there on my computer doing work.
You're going to help me design my home.
You got it. I'm there. I got free the whole month of June.
Oh, good. Perfect
So
timing.
we'll need you.
Perfect timing.
I'm there.
I'm with you, girl. So I have a friend of mine who is my age, my career trajectory, probably going to listen to this podcast and know who she is. But she doesn't have children, and she takes her work home all the time. And I'm like, my friend, I love you. You are killing yourself. And I don't think having kids is on, in a part of where she wants to go in life. And I said, that's okay. Borrow a friend. Do something, because what happens when you have kids is you are pushed to separate.
Yeah.
Like, you literally have children who need
Rely on you.
everything of you. You can try to answer emails, but let's be honest, they're half-assed.
Yes.
And, you can't bring your A game, so you have to separate. And at that point, that's when this feeling of knowing that not everything that you thought matters does happens. You gave me goosebumps, Lauren, when you were talking about that, because I go back and I really look at my life in the same way. And I think, there's this, we talked about law of attraction, you and I earlier. And the thing is when you put everything, all your eggs in a basket, and you're going after something and you want to get that audition, you want it to pan out, or you want that job, or you want that client, whatever. Sometimes you push it farther away. Like, the more you push, the farther it goes. So sometimes if you just do your best, good is good enough. I've had to learn that with children, that beautiful things will happen because you're not chasing. It will come to you, and you're being authentic to who you are and what you're supposed to do in this world, that you realize, if I get this gig, great. If I don't, great. Like, it's going to be okay.
And that's the thing I think I'm learning to settle into, is I can only give so much of my time each day to each of these pursuits. I can really only write about 500 words a day. I can really only go to rehearsal when my husband and I can balance his work and travel schedule and our childcare needs. And sometimes I have to say no, or sometimes I have to call in for help. And I think that the helpful thing in all of that too is, sometimes you do hear, well, especially in writing and acting. And I know, Stephanie, you know, in writing, you hear no a lot and you get turned down a lot. And in entrepreneurship, you hear that, you see that a lot and get, you know, and I think that's a lesson for my children. As much as it is for me, that it's really valuable to fail. It's really valuable to hear no and to keep going, because that's what my kids are learning from me is grit.
Yeah.
And there's no better way I can teach them than by going, hey, hey, that agent rejected me.
Share
and I
your
worked
failure.
really hard to get their attention, and they said no. And hey, I went on that audition and I messed up real bad, and here's why I didn't get the job. But I'm going out again tomorrow. And I think that's...
Wait, you didn't give up after the first time not getting it? So many of my kids give up the first
why
time.
hasn't anyone hired me?
I don't understand.
The teaching your kids lessons is a big part of what has motivated me as a parent. I mean, I've thought so much about our daughter and how, and even when she was still just a baby, when I wanted to do things and felt the pull of, okay, if I do this, it's going to mean a little bit less time with her. And maybe it's just pure justification so that I can do what I want to do at the end of the day. But there's a part of me that has always felt like, no, what I am doing is ultimately showing her that I still have priority and that I have to prioritize myself sometimes.
Yeah,
and what prioritizing myself looks like is I have some things that are non-negotiable. Like I may not be able to do shows anymore because the rehearsal schedule is just a little bit too much with everything, but I'm gonna continue to play volleyball once a week. And that's time that we're gonna move heaven and earth to make that work so that mommy cannot be a crazy person and kill everyone.
You become a better mom.
Yes, exactly.
So when you do the things you're passionate about, you become better at everything.
And I want her to see that I am allowed to prioritize myself. I want her to see that I care a lot about something and that I make an effort to make it happen, even when it's hard. Even when it means other people have to sacrifice a little bit. Jordan and I had this conversation a lot when our first was born, because he was still doing a lot of shows back then. And there were some that were dream roles. And
I feel this is the perfect time for me to chime in.
Yeah, please.
So I've listened to all you tell me how, having kids has changed you. And I said at the beginning of the episode that having kids didn't change me at all. I feel like that's much to my detriment in the beginning, because it really was. I was doing shows, and I had a baby coming, and it was like, okay, I'm not going to do this show because the baby's due during that show, but as soon as as soon as the baby comes, right after that, one of my dream roles is coming up, and I'm going to do that show, and then I know this show's coming up next. I just kept going forward at the same trajectory, whether the kid was there or not, because it's like, the kid, we'll work it out, we'll figure it out. But I was still going ahead as I always had. I wasn't really thinking, oh crap, my life just changed a whole lot. And it wasn't until, we're well into the mix and Lene's looking at me like, okay, you're not doing another fucking show because you need to stay home with this kid a little bit and you need to make sure that you're hanging out with this family also. And we can't be out at the theater, which I completely understand.
But let's be real though.
It took a while to be like, wait a second.
Let's tell them what really happened. Can we do that?
Sure, go ahead. I'd love to hear it.
Well, when I say what really happened is, what I mean is Jordan did back-to-back shows. And finally we got to a place where I was starting to get pretty resentful because I had also done a show and I had agreed to do a show. And when I agreed to do that show, he wasn't doing a show. And so it was going to work out that he was going to be with the baby and I was going to get to go do a show and get my thing. And then he heard about another show that was another dream role.
I was offered a show,
and he was how did it go down? It was something like, I found out from one of our good friends that he was thinking about doing the show, and I asked him about it, and he was like, well, I hadn't decided if I was going to do the show. And like the faces in our listeners can't see the faces, but the two women are like, I'm sorry, what? Cory, your face was like a little bit slower to that.
Thank you for
He's like, what's the problem here? I don't understand.
The trajectory.
But like for our listeners, like you get it. It was like, I'm sorry, did you just say you were you were still deciding like this needs to be a joint? And it got really ugly. And Jordan and I have never been big fighters. I mean, we've always been really
unlike
good
our
partnership.
10 fingers, we could probably count in our 10 years together the amount of actual fights we've had.
Yeah. He held up his fist like fist fight. No, that's not what he
She just punches me a lot, and then I fall down and cower in the corner. And
say that. People will believe you. They know me.
don't believe her smiles.
No, but seriously, it was this really ugly moment, and I was really upset. And I don't know exactly what I said, but I don't know what I said, but Jordan got really upset too. And a few days went by where we were just not really talking. And finally, he said something. He was like, I'm just really sad because forever you've joked that we would get divorced over your dead body. Like, I've always said, you cannot divorce me. We will never get divorced. And now I feel like there's a part of you that is really upset with me. And I worry if you still feel that way. And I was like, oh, babe, no. We're still never getting divorced. It's just, is the rest of your life gonna be happy or gonna be miserable? and so then we laughed, of course, and we did. We talked about it.
Since.
You gave in, right?
You get the
Again, the listeners
Shut up and get
can't
in the
see
corner.
the faces, but you know what I
Never
kind
had a
of
sad day
love
the rest
about
of my
that?
life.
I kind of love your like an envy, maybe, Jordan, your ability to like, I'm still the same person, and now there's just a baby. And while that maybe is simplifying it, it also means that you're the kind of person who's like, this baby's just going to come and be a part of the adventure.
And that's actually what happened.
Yeah, and I
She
think
did.
that's really cool.
We did just incorporate her into
She
our
was at
lives.
rep rehearsal, like being
Yeah.
held by the director while he's like directing me to take bags of Coke from my pocket and pass them off to the script.
And that's an interesting thing
Like-
to speak to, that sort of alignment of
She
who
was
you,
at
of
set
all
rehearsal.
the
And
And
parts
that's
of who
exactly
you are.
right. Yeah. And when you said alignment, thank you for saying alignment, because as through my business, I teach a workshop on work-life alignment. And that's exactly the word I love to use, because I think what it is holding on to those deep core values and figuring out where those core values shine in what parts of your life, and try and bring more time to those things and figure out where you all fit in that big puzzle.
I also think it makes for cooler kids.
It does. Our
Because
kid is real
if
cool.
you put the brakes on, yeah, she is.
We don't know about the little one yet. He's still debating. We're still.
He's the boss.
Jury's
He's
out.
my boyfriend, and I
He's
don't appreciate you talking
awesome.
about him like that.
He's too young for you.
I just
He learned
listen.
num-nums. He's good.
I think it's really cool that, I mean, I think the kind, and I don't know, I don't want this to sound like I think there's a right and wrong way to parent, because I think there are right and wrong ways for each family.
Right. I agree.
But for me, I feel like I am not going to raise the kind of kids that I feel like are the most holistic and well-rounded if I put the brakes on who I am to solely meet their needs and to solely address everything that, if everything that I do is put on hold, and if their lives are never inconvenienced because my life is completely in service to them, that's not teaching them how to be the kinds of people who are also sometimes patient and in service to the people they love. And I mean, gosh, of course I want them to pursue what they love, and I'll come and support them in that, but it also needs to be something they learn to do for other people. And so maybe it's not like a perfectly balanced thing when they're little people and you're a big person. Like, it's not going to be a 50-50. But I think it's important that, like, I just taught a class today over at Anchorage School here in town about writing and monologue performance. And they were in from out of town, so they just came and they watched me teach a class for an hour. And I said, you just sit back there with your magazine and your coloring book, or you can listen and watch me do this thing that I've been doing for a couple of years now. And they did. They were part of the adventure. And maybe it's a little inconvenient. Maybe it's a little annoying for them. Maybe it's the best thing. Maybe it's the thing that they're going to remember.
I hope that it makes them want to invite us into their adventures later.
Yeah.
I wonder if we bring them in and talk to them about our failures. It's my hope that will ultimately open that line of communication so that it goes both ways later, and especially when it's more important.
Yes.
When things start getting harder, because like you always say, little people, little problems. And the bigger they get, the bigger the problems
And if you
get.
don't listen to their problems now, they're little bitty tiny things. It's little to us when they're little, but it's never been little to them. So,
Cory, have you changed a lot?
Okay, they need to know when you were a kid and everybody else would, like, I was a kid, my first job was at the movie theater.
I worked at a daycare.
He worked at a daycare.
So you've always been a
I
dad.
have always been around children. I wanted 10 children. I still want 10 children.
Talk about stay-at-home moms. Cory's like, I'm waiting for you to, like, carry the family, girlfriend, because I want to be a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah, I'm like, make me a millionaire stay-at-home dad, please. 'Cause I will do it.
And I tell people a lot. I'm like, Cory is a better dad than I am mom. And I don't mean that in the normal way. But when you look at, and I think some of that is what, Lauren, you were talking about earlier, is this box we live in. And it's like, oh, but I feel guilty if I do this or that. Because as my business started to evolve, Cory's like, you got it, girl, go. And so when I go, he's got it.
I'm there.
Yeah.
You know?
And Jordan's the same way.
Yeah, that's my happy place.
Thank God for these two men. Jordan's the same way. He used to joke that he was going to be a stay-at-home dad, but then after we had a couple of long weekends, just like by the end of Monday, we were both like, "This, no, we can't." I mean, props to the people who do it.
Our kids are very like, okay, now what? Now what?
I think probably everyone's kids are, but
I don't have enough activities. I'm like, just go watch TV or something for a little bit.
And when you're outnumbered, hello.
Yeah.
And I'm 3-1.
Running that zone defense.
Right. And
I think it's important what you both said though about him being a better parent in some ways. This whole identity goes to how we serve our children also, because Jordan's the imaginative one. He's the one that gets down on the floor and really plays with them. And I am the processor, and my love language is doer. I like to do and talk and I look forward to the deep conversations we can have and the snuggles. And I have a hard time with loud noises. So like when they want to be wild and crazy, that's just not my zone. That's
very familiar.
That's his zone.
Yeah.
He's the loud and crazy one. And it's so important for us to not carry that guilt and not carry that judgment of I'm not a good parent, or I'm not a good employee, or I'm not a good mom, or I'm not a good because of. We are who we are, and we serve in our own way, and we just have to fucking own it.
Right.
I have to know it's important for me to remember that you don't like loud noises at other times too.
She doesn't like loud noises any of the times.
Can everybody
ever.
shh?
It's a very noisy room.
what good does it do to tell yourself those things? It doesn't do anything.
It doesn't serve us.
What's
You're
the
right.
thing that,
It
like,
doesn't serve the kids.
let
Why
the
do we do
lawyers
it
be
then?
lawyers, right? Like, don't try to, whatever your deal is, don't try to do all the jobs, because we're not going to be able to do all the jobs. If you are good at whatever you're good at, lean into that and let somebody else who can fill those other boxes lean into their
and be happy about it. And I think this is what we're starting to see, especially amongst tribes of women. There was this very competitive feeling amongst women because there was so little room at the top for them. And now what we're starting to see is more collaboration amongst women, more raising each other up. I am a very proud member of many tribes of people. I shouldn't just say women. I think that we are all starting to acknowledge exactly what you just said, Lauren, that we do have different strengths. And even if we are in a similar business or have similar feelings about things or similar philosophies or similar approaches, we don't have the same voice. We're not the same people, and our messages will resonate, and how we serve will serve people differently. And I am so grateful to be a part of this group and other groups that are open to that kind of conversation. And I think we as moms and dads have to be able to step back.
I love how you said "and dads," because I have to go back to this. So I was, when I lost my job, I was telling you about this earlier. I went to a Mother's Day out event, and I was so excited about it because it was Valentine's Day and the kids got to participate. And there's all these women in the middle of the day who are focused 100% on their kids, and that's beautiful. But they started to bash their husbands. And I'm in this group, and I'm sitting here like, that imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should be the husband. You should be bashing me because my husband rocks. And they actually wrote a whole chapter about dads in my book, talking about how the stereotype of that, whether it's, of being a strong woman or whatever, but the stereotype of dads, they get a lot of flack, man.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be able to do what I do, and our kids wouldn't be what they are. So this whole identity mentality, like, makes me go crazy, because we live in a world now where like we just throw that out. I mean, today I came home late. Cory had all 3 kids, fed, bathed, and had dinner waiting for me. Like, that's beautiful.
Amazing.
And that's what happens when you have a partnership. And I think in being a parent and being able to still have your identity, you have to work together, and it's something that requires that give and take.
And I think it needs, I think if you're in a partnership like that, that's a healthy one. It's helpful when you are doubting who you are, and when you are questioning your own worth, or maybe this is just me speaking for me, that the other person's like, this is how much value you have to offer.
Absolutely.
This is what you have to offer the world. I think that I know I have single parents in my family, and what they do is incredible and incredibly hard.
So hard. And we're going to have an episode on single parenting. I have a couple of people already identified that we're going to interview.
That's a superpower.
Holy hell.
That is. There's
Holy
a special
hell.
place in heaven, because that is hard.
Oh, man.
It's a superpower. And I think I think it's such a blessing and such a place of privilege, really, to have someone else in the world who is as invested as you are in your children, and who is as invested as you are in each other's worth and contribution to the family and to society, and just to be there to remind each other, like, this is why you've gotten as far as you have. This is what you have to offer, because we all forget.
And I just have to say, if we have listeners out there who are co-parenting with someone, and you feel like, well, I don't get that kind of support, the first piece of advice I would offer is to give the kind of support that you want to the other person. Start saying those things out loud. It's super awkward for us sometimes at first when we aren't the kind of lovey-dovey or overly, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Complimentary.
Overly compliment. You know what I mean? Yes. It can be really awkward at first, but if you just start dropping little bits of gratitude, those little bits of gratitude, it's a culture changer. I mean, truly,
Absolutely.
It changes the coloring of everything in your life. So even if you're not getting it, even if you have to start it from a place of, I don't feel like I should have to do this, just do it a few times and see what happens. And it will change the game, but you have to take it upon yourself to start making the change, because you can't sit around and expect it to happen. And if you feel like you're in a relationship that is unbalanced, the only way to fix it is to start talking about it and to start contributing to positivity and new growth.
It's hard.
And
it's
new
hard
growth
to get
starts with
better
yourself.
at being a human being.
Well, I talk a lot about mindsets and how negative thoughts create this internal loop in our mind that then becomes an external loop that starts bringing negative energy into our lives. If that has so much power, then why can't we pause and realize that if you change your thoughts, everything changes. If you change your thoughts and stop seeing the negative and start trying to see the positive, no matter how hard it is, if you consciously do it, what will happen is you will start attracting the stuff that you are thinking about.
Yep. So don't be that person that just wants to wallow. Don't do it. Make the choice. He can't have an episode without singing. He just can't. He can't do it.
It was the
Very good.
perfect song.
So to wrap up here, we're going to just pretend like we're going to redo the intro in a second. Okay. But to wrap up here, please, 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 we're going to put a link on our website and in the episode show notes to Stephanie's book. It's called Color Today Pretty, and it's incredible. Please check it out. You will not be sorry.
Will you be doing a sequel, Color Tomorrow Handsome?
I'm not, but I am working on 2 more books. And one of them is actually about what you're passionate about and how to turn that passion into a profession. So that might be, might have to come
profession?
back. Yeah. A very handsome profession with good beards.
Yeah.
With good beards, close
So
up.
check it out. For our friends that live in Texas, in the Dallas area.
DFW Metroplex.
Dallas, Fort Worth.
Yes.
Lauren LeBlanc is quickly
big
taking
deal.
over the stages all around, doing some incredible shows. So look her up. Also, stay in touch. Do you still have a blog? Are you still doing
I
that?
have a website and there's a blog on there.
Oh, what?
We will link you to the website a la Lauren
your
LeBlanc.
LaurenKLeBlanc.com.
Do check out her website, laurenkleblanc.com, where she has a blog, and she will have information about her books soon to be released.
It's my writing and performing.
Writing and... God, you just do that. Also, check out Lauren LeBlanc's website. Lauren, tell us about it.
LaurenKLeBlanc.com, where you can find out all about my
Stuff.
writing and performing careers.
Yeah. Check it out. Should we link to your...
Chapter something in your book.
Yeah.
That's where I'm
He gets some kudos
Yeah.
in there. But actually, if you visit colortodaypretty.com, I have a blog there too. And I talk a lot about finding perspective in life. And Cory and the kids are interwoven into every element of that tapestry.
You are so welcome.
Pop in that bubble.
How did you know your presence would cause such greatness?
When the day I was born.
You too.
The funny thing is he's literally the most humble human. So you're pulling out something in him that I love.
Maybe you should swim
I'm
more.
creating a
New
monster. Wait till
besties,
you
new
see.
besties.
Maybe you'll make him more humble.
What are you trying to say?
He does cook. Maybe some humble pie.
I do love... That's peanut butter, right?
It is.
Oh,
all the
Peanut
time.
butter.
He's Jordan's also the cook of our house too. Oh man, okay, awesome. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. I feel like I'm a better human being after recording this episode, and
A more aligned human being.
a more aligned human being. It is true. It is true.
Aligned and undefined.
Ooh, I like that, girl. That's good. I like
Episode
it.
title.
Aligned and undefined.
Yeah.
Who
I
am
love
I?
it. As always, we love our bourbon and we love our babies, but please
Drink responsibly.
We'll see you next week or next month, whenever we decide to do this again.